parents gave my startup fund to my sister's fourth wedding because she needs it more. I sued, lost everything, but now she's already divorced again and begging me for forgiveness. Hey Reddit, buckle up because this is going to be a wild ride through decades of family dysfunction, financial betrayal, and the most predictable divorce you've ever heard of. I'm talking about the kind of story that makes you want to throw your phone across the room. Except you can't, because you need to keep reading to see how spectacularly everything implodes. I'm a 35-year-old woman who spent the better part of a decade building something from nothing, only to watch my parents hand my life savings to my sister for her fourth, yes, fourth wedding to another loser who everyone except her could see was trash from a mile away. And now she's divorced again, broke, and suddenly I'm the family hero she needs to rescue her. Spoiler alert, that's not happening. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the full picture of the dysfunction I grew up in, because without context, you might actually think I'm the here. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why I don't lose a second of sleep over what happened to my sister and parents. My sister Victoria, let's call her Vicky because that's what she insists everyone call her, like she's some kind of celebrity, is 3 years older than me. From the moment I could form memories, it was obvious who the favorite was. I'm not talking about subtle preference here. I'm talking about Vicky gets a new car for her 16th birthday while I get a used bike from Craigslist level favoritism. When Vicky wanted to go to an expensive private college for communications, basically a degree in being social, my parents took out a second mortgage, $180,000 over 4 years, and she graduated with a 2.4 GPA and zero job prospects. When I wanted to go to community college to study business and accounting, they told me I should get loans like a normal person because they couldn't afford to help me. I was 18 and standing in the kitchen when my dad literally said, "Your sister needed the investment more. You'll figure it out." That became their catchphrase for everything. Vicky needs it more. Vicky is going through something. Vicky deserves this. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through community college, transferred to a state school, graduated with a 3.8 GPA, and had a job lined up before I even got my diploma. My reward, a text message that said, "Congrats," and an Olive Garden gift card my mom regifted from her work Secret Santa. Vicky, on the other hand, moved back home after college and lived rent-free for 2 years while finding herself, which apparently meant going to expensive yoga classes and dating every trust fund bro. She got an entry-level marketing job that paid $35,000 a year and acted like she was running Fortune 500 companies. She'd come home complaining about her boss not recognizing her genius, and my parents would pat her hand and tell her she was too good for that place anyway. I was living in a studio apartment the size of a shoebox, eating ramen for dinner so I could save money. And nobody gave a single. If I mentioned I was struggling, my mom would hit me with, "Well, you wanted to be independent. This is what that looks like." But when Vicky needed help with her car insurance, Dad covered it without blinking. When she wanted to take a girls' trip to Miami, Mom pitched in $800 because she works so hard and deserves a break. The double standards were so blatant that even extended family started noticing. My uncle pulled me aside at a family reunion once and asked if my parents treated me differently. I just shrugged and said I was used to it. He looked genuinely sad for me, but what was I supposed to do? Make a scene? I'd learned early that complaining about Vicky just made me look jealous and petty in my parents' eyes. Here's where it gets really fun. Vicky got married for the first time when she was 24, met some guy named Brad at a rooftop bar, dated him for 6 months, got engaged after 3. Brad was an entrepreneur, which meant he had a lot of ideas and zero follow-through. My parents spent $40,000 on that wedding. $40,000. Open bar, string quartet, designer dress, the whole production. They had it at a vineyard 2 hours away and invited 200 people. I was in my second year of working full-time and finishing my degree at night. I couldn't afford to take time off work for the 3-day wedding weekend they'd planned, so I came for the ceremony and left right after. Vicky was pissed and didn't talk to me for 2 months. My mom called me selfish for not being there for my sister's special day. Never mind that I was drowning in student loans and working 60-hour weeks. That marriage lasted 18 months. Turns out Brad was cheating on her with a yoga instructor. Shocking to literally no one except Vicky. She came home crying. moved back into my parents' house, and got the full sympathy tour. They paid for her divorce lawyer $8,500. They covered her therapy, another $3,000 over 6 months. They bought her a new wardrobe to help her feel confident again, probably another $2,000. I kept a running total in my head because the disparity was so insane. Wedding number 2 came when Vicky was 27. This time it was Marcus, a personal trainer she met at her gym. Marcus was actually a decent guy, or so I thought. My parents only spent $25,000 on this wedding because Vicky wanted something more intimate. That marriage lasted 2 years. Divorce reason, they grew apart. Translation, Vicky got bored. Divorce number 2 cost my parents another $6,000 in legal fees. Plus, they helped her get a new apartment because she couldn't afford the rent on her own. Security deposit, first and last month, plus furniture, probably another $5,000. I'm 28 at this point, and I've saved $40,000, living like a monk in a 1-bedroom apartment, driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic, and bringing my lunch to work every day. I haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years. I shop at thrift stores. I cut my own hair in my bathroom mirror because barbershops cost money, but I'm building something. I'm working towards something bigger. Wedding number 3 happened when Vicky was 30. She met Tyler on a dating app. Tyler worked in crypto, which meant he talked about Bitcoin at parties and had no actual income. I tried to warn her. I actually sat her down and showed her red flags I'd researched about Tyler's business ventures. She called me jealous and told our parents I was trying to sabotage her happiness. My parents sided with her, obviously, dropped another $30,000 on wedding number 3. This time, I was specifically uninvited because Vicky said my negative energy would ruin her special day. My mom called to tell me and actually said, "Maybe it's better this way. You never seem happy at these events." Anyway, that marriage lasted 15 months before Tyler's crypto investment firm, surprise, turned out to be a scam that cost several people their savings. He fled the state to avoid lawsuits. Vicky filed for divorce, moved back home again, and guess who paid for divorce attorney number 3? At this point, my parents had spent over $100,000 on Vicky's weddings and divorces. I'd received exactly $0 in support for anything. Not business school, not when my car died, not when I had a medical emergency and needed to cover my deductible, nothing ever. While Vicky was on her merry-go-round of marriages and disasters, I was building an actual life. After graduating, I worked in corporate accounting for 5 years, hating every second but learning everything I could about business finance, market analysis, and startup funding. I watched other people build companies and thought, I could do this better. I started freelance consulting on weekends, helping small businesses organize their finances and plan growth strategies. Word spread. I was good at it, really good. Business owners would hire me to come in, audit their operations, and give them a roadmap for profitability. I charged reasonable rates, worked my ass off, and built a reputation for actually delivering results. By age 32, I had saved $85,000 specifically for starting my own consulting firm. Not just freelancing out of my apartment, but a real company with an office, employees, and the infrastructure to take on bigger clients. I'd already secured 2 anchor clients who'd commit to year-long contracts the day I opened my doors. I had a business plan, I had projections, I had everything lined up. I was going to call it Apex Financial Consulting. I'd already registered the LLC. I had a lease ready to sign on a small office space. I had interviewed 3 potential employees. I designed a website, created marketing materials, set up the business bank accounts. This was happening. After years of grinding, after watching my sister piss away money on fantasy weddings while I ate ramen and walked to work to save gas money, I was finally going to have something that was mine. The $85,000 was sitting in a high-yield savings account I'd opened specifically for this purpose. I didn't tell my parents the full amount because I'd learned long ago that any success I had just became a reason for them to ask for money or tell me I should help Vicky out. I kept my cards close to my chest, but I made one critical mistake, one stupid, naive, trusting mistake that would destroy everything. I told my parents I was close to opening my business. I told them I'd saved enough and was planning to launch in 3 months. I even showed them the office space. I was excited and like an idiot. I wanted them to be excited for me too. I wanted one moment, just one, where they looked at me with the same pride they showed Vicky when she picked out floral arrangements for wedding number 2. My dad nodded and said, "That's ambitious. Have you thought about what happens if it fails?" My mom said, "Don't forget to be realistic about these things. Most small businesses fail in the first year." That should have been my warning sign. 2 weeks after I told my parents about my business plans, Vicky announced she'd met someone new. His name was Derek. She'd known him for 6 weeks. Derek was a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. Finally, someone with an actual job and a steady income. My parents were thrilled. "This one seems different," my mom kept saying. I met Derek once. He seemed fine. Normal guy, decent job, a little boring. But compared to crypto scammer Tyler and unemployed entrepreneur Brad, boring seemed like a massive upgrade. I honestly hoped it would work out because maybe, just maybe, if Vicky was finally settled and happy, my parents would stop throwing money at her and treating me like an afterthought. Then came the engagement. 6 weeks of dating, and Derek proposed with a ring that probably cost more than my car. Vicky posted it all over social media with the caption, "4 times the charm. When you know, you know." The comments were brutal. Her high school friends were posting, "Congrats," but you could feel the side eye through the screen. One person literally commented, "Girl, take your time this go round." Vicky deleted it within an hour. The wedding planning started immediately, and this time Vicky wanted to go all out. She'd learned from her past mistakes and wanted a wedding that reflected her growth as a person. Translation. She wanted the most expensive wedding yet to prove this marriage was different from the others. The initial budget was $60,000. My parents sat me down at a family dinner to tell me about it. They seemed nervous, which should have been another red flag, but I was distracted by the shrimp scampi my mom had made. She only made that dish for special occasions or when she wanted something. "Vicky's really found the right one this time," Dad started. "Derek's a good man with a stable career. They're going to build a real life together." I nodded, eating my shrimp, waiting for whatever favor they were about to ask. "The wedding's going to be expensive," Mom continued, "but it's important to Vicky. After everything she's been through, she deserves to have the wedding of her dreams." I wanted to point out that she'd already had 3 weddings, and each one had been described as the wedding of her dreams. But I kept my mouth shut. Then came the hammer. "We don't have the money saved to cover it all," Dad said. "We've already spent so much helping Vicky get back on her feet after Tyler, and our retirement accounts are pretty tapped. We were hoping you could help out as a wedding gift. You're doing well financially, and Vicky needs this." There it was. Vicky needs it more. I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter, exhausted laugh. "You want me to give money for Vicky's 4th wedding? The same Vicky who uninvited me to her 3rd wedding." "That's water under the bridge," Mom said quickly. "She feels terrible about that. This is a chance for you to show you support her." "How much?" I asked. They looked at each other. Dad cleared his throat. "Whatever you can contribute, every bit helps." "Give me a number," I pressed. $15,000 would really make a difference," Mom said quietly. $15,000. Nearly 20% of my startup fund. Money I'd saved through years of sacrifice while they bankrolled Vicky's disasters. "No," I said. Dead silence. "Excuse me," Dad's voice went cold. I said no, I'm not funding another one of Vicky's weddings. I have my own financial goals. "You're being selfish," Mom said. "Your sister is trying to build a life." "She's tried to build a life 3 times already," I shot back. "Each time cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Each time ended in divorce. I'm not subsidizing another disaster." "Derek's different," Dad insisted. "Brad was different. Marcus was different. Tyler was different. They're all different until they're not. And even if Derek is different, that doesn't make this my financial responsibility." The dinner ended badly. I left before dessert. Vicky called me from my parents' phone later that night, crying, asking how I could be so cruel. I hung up without responding. For 2 weeks, I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd set a boundary and they'd finally respect it. I thought wrong. I should have seen it coming. I should have protected myself. But I'm an idiot who still deep down wanted to believe my parents weren't completely terrible people. I had them as authorized users on one of my accounts for years, a joint checking account we'd set up when I was 18. and they wanted to be able to transfer me money for emergencies. They never used it. The account mostly sat there with a small balance. But after I started my business fund, I'd been moving money between accounts to maximize interest, and I'd temporarily moved $50,000 into that joint account before transferring it to my business savings. I say temporarily because it was supposed to sit there for 3 business days before the final transfer went through. It was never meant to stay there, but that 3-day window was all they needed. I woke up on a Tuesday morning to a notification from my bank. Large withdrawal, $45,000. I woke up on a Tuesday morning to a notification from my bank. Large withdrawal, $45,000. My stomach dropped. I immediately called the bank, thinking it was fraud. The woman on the other end pulled up the transaction. The withdrawal was made by Susan Clark, she said. She's listed as an authorized user on the account. Susan Clark, my mother. I couldn't breathe. I actually couldn't breathe for a solid minute. I asked the woman to repeat what she'd said because surely I'd misheard, but no. My mother had walked into a branch, shown her ID, and withdrawn $45,000 in a cashier's check made out to herself. I called her immediately. She didn't answer. I called my dad. Didn't answer. I called Vicky, straight to voicemail. I drove to my parents' house. They weren't home. I sat in their driveway for 3 hours before they finally showed up. When they saw me, my mother's face went pale. "Sherry, where's my money?" I didn't yell. I was eerily calm. Shock does that to you. "Honey, we can explain," Mom started. "Where is my money?" My dad stepped forward. "We borrowed it for Vicky's wedding. We'll pay you back." "You borrowed it. You withdrew $45,000 without asking me." "You're on the account," Dad said, like that justified everything. "Technically, it's shared money. That account has been sitting empty for 8 years. I moved that money there for 3 days before a transfer. You knew that wasn't your money. You stole from me." "We didn't steal," Mom insisted. "We borrowed. There's a difference." "Did you ask permission?" Silence. "Did you plan to tell me?" More silence. "Then you stole. You committed theft. Give it back right now." "We can't," Dad said. "We already gave it to the wedding planner. Deposits are non-refundable. We'll pay you back after the wedding. We'll work out a payment plan." I actually laughed again, hysterical this time. "A payment plan? You don't have money for Vicky's wedding, but you're going to have money to pay me back $45,000. How does that math work?" "We'll figure it out," Mom said. "We always do. You'll figure it out with my money. Money I saved. Money I worked for. Money I was going to use to start my business." "The business can wait," Dad said. "Vicky's wedding is in 6 weeks. She needs this money now. You're young. You have time to save again." I stared at him, really looked at him, saw him clearly for the first time in my life. He genuinely believed what he was saying. He genuinely thought Vicky's 4th wedding was more important than my entire future. "I want every cent back by the end of the month, or I'm calling the police and reporting this as theft." "You wouldn't," Mom gasped. "Watch me." I left. I didn't even slam the door. I just walked away. For the next 2 weeks, they tried everything. Guilt trips about destroying the family, threats about cutting me off. Vicky called me sobbing, saying I was ruining her life. My aunt and uncle called, saying I was being unreasonable. Apparently, my parents had told everyone I'd agreed to help and was now backing out. I called a lawyer and explained the situation. She told me I had a case, but it would be messy because of the joint account. Technically, as an authorized user, my mother had legal access to withdraw funds. Fighting it would mean proving theft of specifically designated funds, which is hard when everything's in a joint account. "Your best bet is civil court," she said. "Sue them for the money. You'll probably win, but even if you do, collecting might be difficult if they don't have assets." "They own their house. Is there a mortgage?" "I don't know." "Find out. If there's significant equity, you could potentially force a sale or place a lien, but that's going to destroy your family relationships." They destroyed the relationship when they stole from me. I filed for $45,000, plus interest and court costs. Small claims wouldn't cover it in my state, so it was regular civil court, which meant getting a lawyer involved and spending money I didn't have on legal fees. My lawyer cost me $5,000 up front. I paid it by maxing out a credit card because all my liquid cash was gone. I had to cancel my business launch. I had to tell my would-be employees I couldn't hire them. I had to break the lease on my office space and lose my deposit. My anchor clients went with another firm. Everything I'd built toward for years was gone. The lawsuit took 8 months. 8 months of depositions, document requests, and my parents hiring their own lawyer to fight me. They claimed the money was a gift. They claimed I'd verbally agreed to help with the wedding. They claimed I was a vindictive sister trying to punish Victoria for being happy. Their lawyer was good, really good, probably cost them $15,000 they didn't have. I later found out Derek had paid for it, which should have been a red flag about that relationship, but whatever. The judge's ruling came down to one critical issue, the joint account. Because my mother was an authorized user with full withdrawal privileges, the court couldn't find criminal theft. I'd never explicitly documented that the money was mine or restricted her access. The fact that the account had been empty for years actually worked against me. The judge said if I didn't want her accessing it, I should have removed her years ago. I lost everything. The judge did give me a narrow sliver, a civil judgment that my parents owed me the money as a debt, to be repaid with interest over 5 years. But without assets to seize, without wages to garnish, they were retired, living on fixed income. There was no realistic enforcement. They could just not pay me, and there was nothing I could do. Legal fees totaled $12,000. I paid every cent on credit cards. My credit score tanked. The business was dead before it started. I couldn't even afford to keep my apartment. I moved into a studio the size of a broom closet and picked up freelance work to stay afloat. Meanwhile, Vicky's wedding happened right on schedule. She posted pictures all over social media. The venue was beautiful. Her dress was stunning. Chocolate fountain, 12-piece band. My $45,000 had paid for every bit of it. I wasn't invited, obviously. The year after the lawsuit was the hardest of my life. I was 33, buried in debt, and watching my sister live her best life on money stolen from me. I worked 3 freelance consulting gigs at once, barely sleeping, eating garbage, and generally existing in a fog of rage and depression. But here's the thing about rock bottom. You can only go up from there. I doubled down. I took every client I could find. I worked 80-hour weeks. I lived like I was 19 again. Budgeted every dollar, cut every expense, and slowly, painfully, I started digging out. By 34, I'd paid off half my legal debt. I rebuilt my credit enough to rent a better apartment. I even started saving again. Not much, but something. And my reputation in the consulting world was growing. Clients referred other clients. I was the woman who would take midnight calls and fix things no one else could. I met someone. His name's Winston. He's a project manager at a tech company. He knows my whole story. He knows about Vicky, the weddings, the stolen money, the lawsuit, and he loves me anyway. We're not married. Frankly, I'm still traumatized by the concept of weddings, but we're solid. He is steady in the exact way my family never was. Deadlines met, promises kept, no theatrics. I also went full no contact with my family, blocked them on everything, changed my number, moved without telling them my new address, made it very clear to extended family that I wanted 0 updates about Vicky, my parents, or anything related to them. For 2 years, that held. I rebuilt my life. I launched a smaller version of my firm under my LLC, just me, from a home office. Not the dream, but mine. And it was growing. Then about 6 months ago, everything came knocking again. My uncle, the only one who'd sided with me, called sounding exhausted. Derek filed for divorce. Vicky's husband? Yeah, apparently things fell apart pretty quickly after the wedding. Shocking, I deadpanned. What happened? From what I've heard through your mom, Vicky was spending money they didn't have. She was using Derek's credit cards to buy clothes, furniture, trips, maxed out 3 cards in the first year. He tried to get her to budget. She called him controlling. Counseling didn't help. He finally had enough. How much debt? 70 grand, on top of what he already carried. I actually whistled. Jesus. He's wrecked, and your parents can't bail her out this time. They took out a home equity loan to pay their lawyer from your case. They're barely making the payments. They called me for money. Did you give them any? Hell no. I told them they made their bed. Good for you. So what's Vicky doing? Living with your parents, working part-time at Target, crying to anyone who'll listen about how Derek changed after the wedding and became financially abusive for asking her to stop spending $5 grand a month on clothes. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not the bitter kind, the kind that shows up when karma is punctual. She's not doing well then. Not even a little. Let me guess. She's been trying to reach me. Your mom gave her your new number? Of course she did. Right on cue, my phone started buzzing. Unknown number. I ignored it. It called 3 more times. Then came the texts. Sherry, it's Vicky. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I'm in a really bad place. Derek left me with so much debt. Mom and Dad can't help. I have no one. I know things ended badly between us, but you're my sister. Please call me. I need to talk to you. Blocked. 2 days later, another number, then another. Google Voice rotational. The voicemails did the predictable cycle: sobbing contrition, accusatory rage, guilt-laced nostalgia, back to sobbing. My parents started calling too. I didn't block them immediately. I wanted to hear the latest manipulations. My mom left a message saying Vicky was going through a really hard time and that I needed to put the past behind us and help her. My dad left one insisting Vicky had apologized and wanted to make amends, and that I was being stubborn by refusing to talk. I ignored all of it. It came to a head 3 weeks ago. I was at a coffee shop working on my laptop when someone sat down across from me. I looked up. Vicky. She looked rough, older than 35, hair scraped into a messy ponytail, Target vest over a plain tee. Don't make a scene, she said immediately. Just hear me out. I closed my laptop. How did you find me? I've been driving around looking for your car for weeks. I finally saw it in the parking lot. That's called stalking. I'm desperate. Her eyes were red. She'd clearly been crying. Sherry, I'm drowning. The debt is killing me. I can't afford therapy. I can barely afford food. Mom and Dad are broke. I have no one else. Not my problem. I know I messed up. I know the wedding money was supposed to be for your business. I know Mom and Dad took it. I was young and stupid, and I just wanted everything to be perfect. You were 32 when you married Derek. That's not young. That's old enough to know better. I made mistakes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She reached across the table and tried to grab my hand. Please, I need help. I need money to pay off these cards, or I'll have to declare bankruptcy. My credit's destroyed. I can't even rent an apartment without a co-signer. I pulled my hand away. Let me get this straight. You want me, the sister you treated like garbage for 3 decades, to give you money to pay off debt you racked up being irresponsible after you let Mom and Dad steal $45,000 from me to pay for your 4th wedding that lasted less than 3 years. It wasn't my fault Derek changed. It's never your fault, Vicky. Brad cheated, but you ignored every red flag. Marcus left because you grew apart, which means you got bored. Tyler was a criminal, but you called me jealous when I tried to warn you. Derek asked for a budget, and you called it abuse. None of it is ever your fault. It's always something that happened to you. I'm trying to apologize. No, you're trying to get money. Big difference. I stood. I'm not giving you a cent. Not now. Not ever. Figure it out like I had to. Sherry, please. I spent 3 years saving $85,000. Every dollar was sacrifice. You, Mom, and Dad burned it down in 6 weeks so you could have another fantasy wedding. You never apologized. You never even acknowledged it. If Derek were still here and the money flowing, you wouldn't be at this table. She started crying louder. People stared. I walked out. She followed me to my car, begging, promising, bargaining. I got in, locked the doors, and drove away. She stood in the parking lot, small and stunned, as I pulled out. That was 3 weeks ago. The calls kept coming, then tapered. My parents left one voicemail that stuck with me. My mom's voice, brittle. I don't know what happened to you. You used to be such a sweet girl. Now you're cold and heartless. I listened to it 3 times. Rage, sadness, then clarity. I recorded a video, just me, dead on to the camera, under 5 minutes. I sent it to my parents, Vicky, and my uncle to share with anyone who wanted my side. I said, this is the first and last time. I laid it all out. The favoritism, the stolen $45,000, the lawsuit, the debt, the collapse of my business, the years it took to rebuild, the line they crossed when they chose Vicky's 4th wedding over my future. I ended with, family is respect, support, and basic decency. By that definition, you stopped being my family years ago. Do not contact me again. Any attempts will be blocked. Show up at my home or office and I'll file for a restraining order. This chapter is closed. I hit send. Then I blocked 17 new numbers over the next 48 hours. By Monday morning, my uncle called to tell me half the family was now on my side. Apparently, my video had been making quiet rounds. A few cousins, Even some of the older relatives had watched it and admitted they'd seen the same patterns for years. "You just said what everyone else was too scared to," my uncle told me. About time someone called them out. Apparently, my mom tried to spin it, saying my video was cruel and unnecessary, but it didn't land. Too many people remembered the decades of favoritism, the endless rescues for Vicky, the way I was always the afterthought, and even those who didn't like confrontation couldn't deny the math. Over $100,000 spent on Vicky's weddings and divorces. 0 for me. 45,000 stolen outright. My parents stopped calling after that. Maybe it finally sank in that I meant what I said, or maybe they just ran out of new numbers to use. Either way, the silence was deafening and peaceful. Vicky, though, didn't disappear right away. 2 weeks after the video, she tried again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a letter. Handwritten, messy, tear-stained in places. She wrote about hitting rock bottom, about how she'd finally realized what she'd done, about how family should forgive family, about how I was her only hope. It was 4 pages long, alternating between apologies and pleas for help. I read the first page. Then I folded it neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into my filing cabinet labeled Weather Report, the same place I'd kept all the voicemails, texts, screenshots, and court documents. Proof, not for revenge, but for sanity. Winston saw the envelope in my hand when I came back from the mailbox. "You okay?" he asked, standing in the kitchen doorway, sleeves rolled up, dish towel slung over his shoulder. "Yeah," I said, "she's still trying." He gave a slow nod. "You're not tempted to answer?" I looked at him. Not even a little. He smiled, half proud, half sad. "Good." We cooked dinner that night. Pasta, garlic bread, a bottle of red wine we'd been saving. Winston toasted to peace, to boundaries, to finally learning that you can love people and still decide not to let them ruin you. By that weekend, I'd blocked the last of Vicky's new numbers. The quiet that followed was strange at first, like learning how to breathe differently. For the first time since I could remember, there was no chaos, no guilt, no obligation disguised as love. The months that followed were steady, not exciting, not dramatic, just quietly good. My business took off again. I landed 2 new clients from referrals and finally crossed 6 figures in annual revenue. Winston and I started looking at small houses, something with a garden and a spare room I could turn into a proper office. One afternoon, while touring a listing on Meadowcrest Lane, a 2-bedroom with blue shutters and a maple tree in front, the real estate agent looked at me and said, "You've got the look of someone who fought hard to get here." I smiled. "You have no idea." We bought it 2 weeks later. 3686 Meadowcrest Lane, my name on the deed, my business in the home office, my piece finally built brick by brick, not given, not borrowed, and definitely not stolen. The last bit of contact came 4 months later. My mom emailed me from a new address with a subject line that simply said, "We heard you bought a house." I hovered over the message for a minute, staring at the preview text. "You've always been so determined, honey, and we're proud of you. Maybe it's time to move past the hurt." I didn't open it. I didn't need to read the rest. Pride that comes after the damage doesn't count. Love that only arrives when they need something in return isn't love at all. Instead, I went out to the backyard, where Winston was painting the fence white, his hair catching the afternoon light. He looked up and grinned. "You look like someone just deleted an email." "I did," I said, sitting on the porch steps. "Best feeling in the world." He laughed. "Better than when you won that client from Deloitte?" "Way better." He came over, sat beside me, and took my hand. "You did it, Sherry. You finally closed the loop." "Yeah," I said, looking up at the quiet sky above Meadowcrest Lane. "I think I did." That night, I made one final entry in the weather report file. A single printed line, dated and bolded. "No response is the final response." I placed it on top, closed the folder, and slid it into the back of the drawer. I didn't need it anymore, but it felt right to keep it. A record of what it took to reclaim my life. I still get the occasional update from my uncle. Vicky declared bankruptcy a few months later, finally. The house my parents had been clinging to went into foreclosure after they defaulted on their loan. They moved into a small apartment across town. Word is, Mom's trying to join a church group again, though half the congregation already knows her reputation from before. Sometimes when I think about it, I still feel a twinge of sadness. Not regret, just the grief of realizing the family I wanted never really existed outside of hope. But grief is lighter than guilt, easier to carry. Winston and I celebrated my 36th birthday last weekend. He surprised me with a cake that said, "built from scratch." It was cheesy. It was perfect. Later that night, while cleaning up, I looked at him and said, "You know what the best part of all this is?" He raised an eyebrow. "That you never have to see another wedding invitation from your sister?" I laughed. "That too. But no. It's knowing that everything in this house, everything in this life, I earned myself. No one can take it, no one can rewrite it, and no one can guilt me for it." He smiled. "You sound free." "I am," I said, "finally. And that's the truth. I'm not the bitter daughter, the family scapegoat, or the villain in their story anymore. I'm the woman who walked away and built her own." So, if you've ever been the one who carried the weight while everyone else got the rewards, the one who said no and got called selfish, the one who set a boundary and got called cruel, take this from me. Keep walking. Let them call you whatever makes them feel better, because someday you'll stand in your own kitchen, at peace, with no noise but the sound of your own quiet joy, and you'll know that was worth everything.